All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about analogies and how you leverage analogies to create your board game. Because if you don't do this right, you might as well give up on having a fun gaming experience. If the way that you're integrating your theme doesn't make sense, then it's not going to be the same as it's not even going to be as good as playing originally or nearly the same as it would be if you had integrated the idea for your theme into the mechanics of the game right the first time. So basically, I'm going to show you a few examples of Monopoly boards that have already been made, and I'll talk a little bit about my own Analogical. And I'm just going to talk, a little bit about how you take that abstract idea, such as a person, place, or thing, or idea, and making that into, the boardwalk, the park place, the hotels, the chance cards, all these different things that basically seem attached to that original game of Monopoly. And in some ways they are, right? Because the goal of Monopoly is to bankrupt your opponents. And in Knowledgeopoly, it's to truth bankrupt them. So in some ways it's like winning the argument. You want to align your theme to the game mechanics. So that's what I'm going to be showing you a few examples of right now. Go over applying the analogy theory to a few different games. But first, let's talk about what an analogy actually is. Comparison between two things, typically for the purpose of explanation or clarification. Well, that's the first one. Really, the main one that we're kind of using here is this logical one. Process of arguing from similarity in known respects to similarity in other respects. Or you could also, say it's somewhat related to all of these, but the biological one I kind of like too. The resemblance of a function between organs that have a different evolutionary origin. What you could say here is, our definition is the resemblance of function between game pieces that have different thematical origins. So the original theme for Monopoly was, big banks or whatever or these big companies are screwing over the little guy. So the theme was these fat cats that wore the top hats that we see. Was the main character was created off that. But you can have obviously the same game mechanics, only this time Einstein is the main character and the theme is knowledge, versus before it was, fat cats as the main character. This time it can be geniuses. So what you're trying to do here is create, these pieces that take part as in the new game that you're making and play the same roles as, the original parts. So how do you do that? I'm going to go over a few examples. So first we're going to start with the proprietal pieces. And, basically we can start here with Trumpopoly. This one I actually found on the internet. It's not even a real Monopoly game, but it's still helpful to go over this just because it still has a lot of good info on it. So first off, whoever did this named all of the different pieces pretty much, except for the last side over here, or this side over here, with other candidates. So this is like an election Trumpopoly. It's not just about Donald Trump and his businesses, but more focused on the 2016 election, which obviously he won. And it's kind of funny. He puts the Democrats first because they're, the least valuable or whatever. And the crooked Hillary, crazy Bernie. And by the way, I don't support Trump. If you do, that's your choice. Definitely don't support him though. And so the objective here is to bankrupt the other candidates of votes rather than dollars. You could say that's the analogy, right? It's an election theme, so you're not necessarily trying to make money. You're trying to win the election. So you would want to theme it around that election. And, they said insult card and racism card. And what we can talk more about the other stuff, but I'm actually going to be a little bit critical of some of this stuff in here. I think they could have made the game better. So one thing is that they have Trump Tower as all the different railroads, as you can see. That's a mistake. I would definitely have, different Trump things as the different railroads. So where they put Trump, steaks and vodka and all that stuff. I don't know if you guys have ever had Trump vodka. I definitely don't plan on having it, but you could put these ones down here as the different railroads rather than just having them all be Trump Tower. So Trump Tower could be the last one, and then Trump Steaks, Trump University, and maybe Trump Airlines or something could be a different one. Now, the next thing is basically instead of having just these random utilities, they just have what is it? Abandoned real estate over here as one of the utilities. And that's not really any good. Abandoned real estate. How is it a utility? What I would have made utilities are electoral college and debates, because those are utilities in the sense of the election. They're things that you could, in theory, you would want as Trump to win. He won the electoral college and not the popular vote. And then the debates, is another thing he wanted to win. So I think those would be better at utilities. They actually just put in another, I think, racism card as a utility. So yeah, we'll come back to that later, but that was all the proprietal stuff for the Trump. Next, there is Earthopoly we're going to go over. And this one, it's mostly alliteration of places on Earth. And then you have, Boardwalk is Mother Earth itself. So you have, deserted deserts, cavernous caves. And the first two pieces are concrete jungle and spaghetti junction. So basically, you have, a city and highways here. Now, I really like their use of, the reduce, reuse, recycle, rethink over here for the different railroads. I think especially this rethink is a good example of how you can make a clever railroad or, add on clever things to the game. Now, their utilities are wind power and solar, which, if I had made this, I would have done solar power. And then instead of wind power, I would have done hydro, just because it's, like H2O power, just because it's closer to waterworks. So it's a little bit closer of an analogy than the wind power analogy. And I actually don't see anything on here where they talk about hydropower. So that's something that, you should consider. So next we'll go ahead and do Foodopoly London. Now this one was funny because it's kind of a closer to the, customizable game, in that it's taken on the theme of Foodopoly, but it is also Foodopoly more in a specific sense, in the London sense. So, they have just a bunch of different, mostly obscure restaurants that I haven't even heard of before in here. And the railroads are actually just those restaurants, which I think is kind of a fail. And then they have some of the more corporate chains, KFC, Starbucks, McDonald's, as basically, the last pieces. I guess because they're, the most of what's there. However, if I had made this, I would have actually just kept it all London restaurants. And I would have put McDonald's, KFC, Starbucks, and, maybe one other, you could add in Pizza Hut they have over here. You could make those the railroads because they're found all over the world, right? Or do Subway or something. And the railroads could be the ones that are commonly found all over the world, but they still have them in London, therefore they're railroads. And then you could do whatever is the number one London specific only right here where McDonald's is. Yeah, and I just don't like how they have fast food at the end. It doesn't really make sense. And then the utilities, they don't really have any. I would make it bar and grill. Seems kind of fun. So next we're going to go to Analogical. And again, we're going to revisit all these for the other non-proprietal board pieces. So for my railroads on Analogical, I did math, science, philosophy, and art. Part of that's actually due to this theory that I'm coming up with in my new book, Spectrum of Wisdom, but I'm not going to promote that too much. Basically, I wanted the railroads to reflect different areas of knowledge. So mathematical, scientific, philosophical, and artistic knowledge. And obviously, you can see different, one's a logical theory down here, one's from physics, that's science, photosynthesis, more science. This equation is more science. psychology. So basically, the railroads I wanted to be aligned with different aspects of knowledge, and I feel like I accomplished that pretty well. And the different pieces of knowledge, obviously I didn't want knowledgeopoly physics or knowledgeopoly chemistry. I wanted a mix of everything, and so you see a lot of different sorts of knowledge throughout the game. Also, for my utilities, I kept the board, it's a customizable board, so it just says electric and water, but the cards say H2O and then the voltage equation, V equals IR. That's because it's knowledgeopoly, and so there's going to be something behind electricity. In this case, I decided to do voltage. Or for H2O, I wanted to mix it up. I could have done viscosity, like I could have done a physics ratio or a physics equation for H2O, but instead I did, its molecular structure, H2O, and that's because it's from chemistry. Then we'll have one from physics down here. So since I'm doing a more general purpose game, I mix those up. You could do it however you wanted. And then, I also have, now we can just move right in to the next part here, which is the community chest, chance, and all the other non-proprietal pieces. So I'll see that on the next video.